The North Star tried to tear open my dry dock without ever leaving it. At 6:12 on a Monday morning, the ferry's engines were idling while an unmanned test cycled the rudders. I was 30 feet away when the steering locked hard to starboard, 2 mooring lines snapped. The stern lurched sideways, crushed a maintenance platform, and drove the dry dock gate off its track before the emergency shutdown killed the pumps. Then every alarm in Coal Harbor Works began screaming, "Clear the dock." Welders dropped torches. Electricians backed away from open panels. 2 apprentices scrambled down a ladder as ice fell from the upper deck. Avery Shaw, the yard's veteran welder, reached the hydraulic station first. "Pressure's not bleeding off. Kill the auxiliary circuit." "It is killed." "Close the mechanical block." He pulled the red handle. The line kicked beneath his gloves, but the rudder stayed jammed. Snow blew through the open dock, crossing the orange fall of welding sparks. Above us, the North Star sat crooked in her supports. Inside the steering compartment, hydraulic fluid glazed the deck. The pressure gauge was pinned at its limit. "That manifold was replaced in December," Avery said, 6 weeks ago. The blue housing still carried factory paint. A white inspection seal crossed the access plate. 3 bolt heads showed even wear. The 4th carried a fresh crescent scrape beneath new paint. Someone had put a wrench on it after inspection. Lucas entered in a wool coat over a suit, his phone already at his ear. My nephew never looked unprepared. "Yes, there were no passengers aboard," he said. "I'll send the incident package within the hour." He ended the call. "Tell me no one was hurt." "No injuries," Avery said. Lucas exhaled. The relief sounded real. "The insurer wants the manifold sent to its approved lab." "Already?" "They monitor the ferry remotely. That is what modern equipment does." Lucas said modern the way some people said civilized. It was rarely about machinery. It was about me. Nothing leaves until the maritime inspector sees it in place. "We do not have time for one of your procedural fights. Preserving a failure scene is procedure. The regulator does not make payroll." Lucas lowered his voice. "Can we discuss finances privately? Avery is the employee trustee. He is also standing beside a ferry that damaged our only operating dock." I stepped between them. "Choose your next sentence carefully. I'm not blaming him. I'm saying we have exposure." That sounded like blame. It sounded like urgency. That was how we had spoken for years. He brought me problems wrapped in polished language. I answered with orders. Even as a boy, Lucas had learned that I usually made time for him eventually. Eventually is often another word for too late. By 7, Harbor Patrol had closed the basin. A safety officer posted a suspension notice on the North Star: "No passenger service. No sea trials. No movement without written clearance." The ferry carried commuters, medical patients, freight, and school teams across Lake Superior. She also carried our company. Her contract covered nearly half our operating costs. Without her, Coal Harbor Works had 3 weeks of payroll. At 8:40, Lucas gathered the department heads in the cold fabrication office. "The lender scheduled an emergency review for Thursday," Lucas said. "The insurer may delay coverage while it investigates our maintenance controls." Nia Bell, a former apprentice now in cost accounting, stood near the back. "Do we make Friday's payroll?" Lucas glanced at me. "Yes," I said. "After that, we keep working until I tell you otherwise." Lucas's mouth tightened. "We should not promise stability before the review." "I promised Friday." Avery folded his arms. "Are layoffs coming?" Lucas hesitated half a second too long. The room changed. People who faced fire and swinging steel looked at one another like passengers hearing water below deck. "I'm evaluating every option," Lucas said. "That means yes," Avery replied. "No layoffs before Thursday," I said. Lucas turned. "You cannot guarantee that." "I just did." The workers returned to the dock because work was the only answer they trusted. Lucas stayed behind. "You think loyalty can replace cash flow?" "No. I think fear destroys work faster than debt. The bank owns our credit line. My family owns this yard. His expression shifted. Your family, he said quietly. I heard the wound in it and left it for later. When I returned to the ferry, 2 insurer representatives were photographing the compartment. A contractor had rolled in a padded shipping crate. What is that for? The manifold, one representative said. Mr. Cole authorized transport. Mr. Cole controls invoices. I control the vessel. The contractor lifted a clipboard. I have a pickup order. You have an empty crate. I pulled the old brass rescue whistle from beneath my sweater and gave one sharp blast. Avery, establish an evidence boundary. Photograph every connection. Nia, log everyone entering. Nothing leaves without my written release. The insurer's representative frowned. This could affect coverage. So could losing the evidence. Lucas returned as Avery sealed the stairs. You are turning a mechanical failure into a confrontation. I am keeping evidence from disappearing. I showed him the scrape beneath the painted seal. For the first time that morning, he had no ready answer. Then he leaned closer. A tool mark proves maintenance happened 6 weeks ago. Maybe your records are wrong. My records are not wrong. That certainty is becoming expensive. He walked away. By noon, the regulator had impounded the steering controls. Lucas spent an hour with the lender and returned looking older. They may invoke the material adverse change clause. How much? $8.6 million. Immediately, if they decide this came from a maintenance violation. Outside my office window, workers cut apart the crushed platform while snow gathered on their shoulders. Lucas placed a folder on my desk. The insurer found a temporary operating waiver from the manifold replacement. We never approved one. He opened the document. It carried the North Star's equipment number, the installation date, and permission to operate before full pressure cycle certification. At the bottom sat an electronic approval, my name, my executive credential, my encrypted signature. I checked the timestamp. The waiver had been approved at 2:14 on a Sunday morning while I was 200 miles away at a Coast Guard memorial. Lucas watched me. Do you remember signing it? I looked up. No, I said. Because I never did. Lucas left my office carrying the forged waiver and reminded me that the lender expected us Thursday. I waited until the door shut. The compliance line used USCG cert. No Coast Guard inspector I knew wrote it that way. The accepted notation had no hyphen. It was the kind of error made by someone copying a form without understanding it. I photographed every page, stored the images privately, and returned the original exactly as Lucas had left it. If he had forged my approval, I did not want him correcting his work. Then an anonymous notice appeared beside the time clocks. Ask Avery who signed off on the repair. Someone tore it down. Another appeared before lunch. Machinists blamed welders. Welders blamed management. Avery found me holding the second notice. 28 years here, he said. I've never signed work I didn't inspect. I know. Knowing quietly isn't helping. Not yet. The lender meeting took place Thursday in the old drafting room. Lucas had replaced the scarred worktables with a rented conference table. A screen covered my father's hull drawings. Sabrina Knox arrived in a gray coat too precise for a Duluth winter. Lucas introduced her as the lender's restructuring advisor. The meeting began with numbers. The ferry suspension had stopped nearly half our revenue. Repairing the gate would cost at least $700,000. The insurer had delayed its decision. If the waiver was accepted as proof of non-compliance, the bank could demand the full $8.6 million balance. Sabrina moved through cash reserves, pensions, vendor payments, and layoffs. Then a slide appeared. Stabilization path. The lender will suspend enforcement for 90 days, Lucas said. If we accept professional restructuring. Avery leaned forward. Meaning what? I become interim chief executive. Marin takes temporary leave. The next slide showed that voting authority attached to my shares would transfer to a committee chaired by Sabrina. That committee could negotiate the sale of non-essential assets, Coal Harbor work sat on 14 acres of Lake Superior waterfront, nothing about it was non-essential. Who is the buyer? I asked. A qualified infrastructure investor has expressed interest, Sabrina said. Name them. Confidentiality restrictions prevent disclosure. A city councilman added that the waterfront committee might condemn part of the property if the dock remained unstable. That would crush its value and make a distressed buyer look like a rescuer. I looked at Lucas. He did not seem surprised. Sabrina displayed projected pension losses if the bank enforced immediately. If the accounts are frozen, she said, employees could face reduced contributions and layoffs before month's end. You're using their pensions to pressure a signature, I said. I'm describing the cost of refusing help. Lucas turned toward me. She's describing reality. No. She's describing one path. And what is yours? Every face moved toward me. For 40 years, I had answered questions like that with certainty. For the first time, I let them see me hesitate. Maybe my judgment is part of the problem. Avery's chair scraped the floor. The waiver carries my authorization, I continued. I know I didn't sign it, but I can't prove that today. The accident happened under my command. Then don't sound like you're surrendering, Avery said. Sabrina said temporary leave would create room for an independent review. Lucas watched me with hope, not triumph. Some part of him still wanted me to say he was ready. I hated that I could use that need against him. I'll take temporary leave, I said. Lucas can manage operations during the review. Avery stood. You can't do this without consulting the employee trust. The trust doesn't appoint the chief executive. It protects workers from decisions made behind closed doors. Lucas stepped closer. The restructuring committee also needs voting authority. No, his hope faltered. I'll step away from operations, I said. I will not approve a sale or waive the trust's rights. You want 90 days, earn them one day at a time. Sabrina exchanged a quick look with him. She had expected more. Lucas offered his hand. I shook it. You asked for the wheel. Keep us off the rocks. I will. That afternoon, workers gathered in the fabrication bay while cameras waited outside the fence. I announced my temporary leave. No one applauded. Avery stood among the welders with his arms crossed. He would not look at me. Lucas promised transparency and said no final sale decision had been made. Final was the word people remembered. I returned to my office. The brass nameplate had been on the door for 22 years. I loosened the screws and photographed the screw heads and holes. Lucas appeared behind me. Why are you taking pictures? Insurance for my memory. I handed him the key. Nia waited near the stairs. I gave her a flash drive containing the waiver photographs. Reconstruct every North Star maintenance purchase from the last 6 months. Invoices, shipping records, receiving logs, vendor addresses. Avoid the executive system unless necessary. She glanced toward Lucas's office. You think he altered the records? I think someone did. And you gave him control. I gave him a title and enough confidence to keep moving. Nia studied me. You didn't surrender. Don't say that to anyone. Avery was harder. I need a complete access list for the ferry, I told him. Every employee, contractor, inspector, and executive credential used since the manifold arrived. Ask the new chief executive. I'm asking the employee trustee. He finally looked at me. You made those workers believe you'd lost faith in yourself. They had to believe it. You're setting a trap. No. I'm trying to learn where one has already been set. I told him the waiver was false. Someone had accessed the steering system after inspection, and Lucas could not know we were rebuilding the record. If I help and you're wrong, Avery said, I help destroy what trust is left. If you don't help and I'm right, Lucas sells the ground beneath us. I want every innocent worker cleared publicly. You have my word. That used to carry more weight. Still, he agreed. The next 2 days moved under Lucas's rules. Late Saturday, Nia called from the accounting office. You need to see this. The legitimate manifold purchase came from Great Lakes Marine Controls. Its serial number matched the unit sealed by the regulator. Then she handed me a second invoice dated 9 days later, same model. Same freight weight. Same internal description, different serial number. The second unit had been billed through Harbor Technical Logistics. No employee had signed for it. No warehouse scan showed it entering the yard. Yet Coal Harbor Works had paid the invoice in full. Where did the money go? Nia turned her laptop toward me. I traced the vendor registration. Harbor Technical Logistics listed a Minneapolis business suite. The address matched the registered office of Knox Restructuring Advisory, Sabrina's firm. I looked at the duplicate invoices, then toward Lucas's locked office. The accident had not created the restructuring plan. Someone inside the restructuring plan had purchased the part that made the accident possible. The duplicate invoice gave us a direction. Nia traced the payment to a freight broker outside Superior. A crate had reached Coal Harbor Works at 11:43 on a Wednesday night, 5 hours after receiving closed. The driver had entered through the East Service Gate using Avery Shaw's code. Avery read the log twice. I was at my granddaughter's school concert. His employee number also appeared beside the steering waiver and altered maintenance record. Someone had chosen the worker most people trusted and built the evidence around him. My code changed after the security upgrade, he said. Finance issued the new one. Lucas's department, Nia replied. Avery looked at me. You think your nephew did it, and you're deciding how much family truth you can tolerate. He started away, then turned. For 30 years, every crisis ended with you deciding behind a closed door. You kept the yard open, Marin, but you also kept control. It hurt because it was true. I thought carrying the danger alone protected people. It protected you from trusting us. You're right, I said. But I need your help before Lucas turns suspicion into an official claim. Avery looked toward the dock. What do you need? Every record the yard created without realizing it. We began with the installation photographs. 11 showed snow pressed against the steering room window. In the final image, the glass was clear, although the metadata claimed all 12 were taken within minutes. That last photo came from another day. Nia said. Avery enlarged the hand beside the manifold. His gloves carried yellow reinforcement across the thumb. The photograph showed plain black leather. Someone had inserted a false completion image. We preserved the files and checked the server history. 41 minutes after the impact, someone using Lucas's executive account had deleted footage from the east entrance, dry dock stairs, and steering corridor. That doesn't prove Lucas was at the keyboard, Nia warned. No. It proves those angles mattered. A night shift welder's helmet camera showed a white maintenance van reflected in his face shield. Nia stabilized and reversed the image. A hooded person carried a crate toward the North Star. The face remained hidden, but the partial fleet number belonged to a contractor Sabrina Knox had added 3 months earlier. My code, my stamp, her contractor, Avery said. It still isn't enough. One missing rivet can sink a case. Examining the sealed manifold required an independent surveyor accepted by both the regulator and insurer. The only qualified person without ties to Sabrina or Lucas was Gabe Ortiz. He hung up when I called, so I drove to his workshop. 18 months earlier, Gabe had refused to certify a tugboat fuel system. Lucas accused him of delaying delivery for a higher fee. The buyer canceled Gabe's contract. I accepted Lucas's explanation. He opened his door 6 inches. You have 5 seconds. I owe you an apology. 4. I should have reviewed the tug inspection myself. 3. Lucas blamed you because you found something he wanted hidden. His expression changed. Why admit that now? Because Avery may be next. I showed him the photograph, gate log, and helmet recording but withheld my theory. I wanted an independent conclusion, not an echo. If your nephew damages my reputation again, I lose the last insurer that accepts my reports. You'll be paid regardless of what you find, and I'll confirm your independence. That won't restore what I lost. No. The truth might. Gabe studied me. You only value independent people when you need an independent answer. I'm beginning to understand that. He agreed to request a joint inspection. 2 mornings later, we met beneath the North Star with the regulator and insurer. Every seal was photographed before testing began. The valve looked clean until his scanner reached the pressure relief channel. A dark crescent appeared inside, localized thinning, he said, manufacturing defect? The insurer asked, too precise. The regulator authorized removal of the cartridge. Beneath matching sealant, someone had ground away a narrow internal section. Under test pressure, the weakened edge folded inward and trapped the steering flow. Could it fail during normal passenger service? I asked. Gabe measured the altered channel. It was designed to fail above harbor operating pressure but below the emergency relief threshold. Someone wanted the steering to lock during a dock test, Gabe explained. Enough force to trigger a safety crisis. Not enough to rupture the main line or lose the vessel underway. The sabotage was calculated, expensive, public, and controlled. Lucas had not planned to sink the ferry. He had planned to make the yard look unsafe. We documented the tool marks and resealed the cartridge. Gabe refused to name a suspect, which made his report stronger. Back in my temporary office, Nia waited with an old scholarship ledger. You paid my tuition. The donor line carried a foundation name, but the authorization code was mine. You earned it. You changed my life and never told me. I didn't want gratitude to become a debt. So you decided what I was allowed to know. Avery had accused me of the same thing. I thought quiet help was cleaner. Sometimes quiet help feels like someone rearranged your life from another room. I'm sorry. She folded the ledger. When this ends, you don't get to call secrecy kindness just because the result was good. Lucas entered before I could answer. The insurer wants a formal cause statement tomorrow. What are you submitting? Unauthorized maintenance by Avery, followed by falsification of inspection records. The draft claim cited Avery's gate code, inspection stamp, and the altered photograph. He had completed the frame exactly as we expected. You believe Avery sabotaged the ferry? I believe the evidence identifies his credentials. That isn't the same answer. It's the answer the insurer requires. If I defended Avery now, Lucas would know we had reconstructed the footage and examined the valve, so I lowered my eyes. Submit the records you rely on. Include the gate entry, photograph, and waiver. Lucas studied me. You agree? The insurer should see exactly what you are claiming. His confidence returned. After he left, Nia whispered, you just gave him Avery's career. I gave him a chance to place every false statement into a signed insurance claim. And if we fail? Then Avery loses his license and pension. That is the part that keeps me awake. I met Avery in the Union Hall and told him, you used my name as bait. I let Lucas use it. That distinction helps you. Not enough. He removed his employee trustee badge and placed it between us. If my license is suspended, the trust appoints someone else. We'll challenge the claim before then. You hope you will. He pushed the badge toward me. Keep it until you remember this yard isn't a chessboard. I left it on the table. At 10:26 that night, my phone rang from a blocked number. A distorted voice said, you found the valve. I remained silent. You think an empty ferry means no one was meant to get hurt. Who is this? The next failure won't wait for an empty vessel. The line disconnected. I locked out every powered craft until independent inspections were complete. No passenger vessel moved, no test began, and no one worked alone. Then I drove to the harbor office and reviewed the restrictions with Owen Pike. Owen had been harbor master longer than Lucas had been alive. He signed the lockout order but stayed seated when I rose. There's something you should know. What? Lucas has been here 3 times this month asking for archived radio logs. Which logs? Owen looked toward the black water of Lake Superior, the rescue where his father died. 27 years had passed since that night. I had spent every one of them making sure Lucas never learned the whole truth. Owen did not ask whether I wanted the truth. He locked the harbor office, turned off the front lights, and led me downstairs to a storage room that smelled of rope, diesel, and wet concrete. Against the back wall stood a row of steel lockers. Most carried faded labels from vessels that had been scrapped years earlier. Owen stopped at one marked Harbor Incidents, Restricted. The padlock had frozen solid. He warmed it with a heat gun until dirty water ran down the door. When the metal finally opened, the hinges groaned as if they had been waiting 27 years to object. Inside were radio tapes, weather charts, handwritten shift logs, and a black ledger sealed in a plastic evidence bag. Owen placed it on the workbench. "You changed the public report," he said. "I corrected what the public did not need to know." That is a polished way to describe it. An 11-year-old boy had just lost his father. And now that boy is tearing apart the company because he believes the lie you left him. I stared at the frozen ledger. Lucas found the rescue summary. Not this one. He found the amended report at the county archive. The amended report said Daniel Cole had taken a company rescue boat into heavy weather after receiving a distress call from the freighter Greyhaven. It said I diverted to assist the larger vessel after Daniel's engine failed. It said worsening waves prevented me from returning before his boat struck the breakwater and sank. Most of those sentences were true. That was what made the report effective. Lucas found me the next morning beneath his father's memorial plaque in the fabrication bay. Daniel's bronze name hung beside a photograph of him at 32, smiling in a red work jacket with Lake Superior behind him. Two workers stood on a lift with drills and straps. "What are they doing?" I asked, removing it. Lucas did not look at me. "The plaque has been there since the year he died. It doesn't belong in the facility after the sale." "There is no sale yet." "There will be." He dismissed the workers and waited until they had crossed the bay. Then he pulled a folded copy of the rescue report from his coat. "Do you remember writing this?" "Yes." "You received the Greyhaven distress call at 10:41. My father's engine trouble was reported at 10:46. I said nothing. You chose a commercial freighter before you chose your brother. The Greyhaven had 14 people aboard. My father had one. He had you waiting at home. I knew that. And you still left him." His voice stayed quiet. Anger was easier to withstand when it shouted. Lucas had spent years teaching his anger to wear a tie. The Greyhaven was taking water near the shipping channel. I said. "If she rolled, people would have died. You could have sent another crew. There was no other rescue crew close enough. You could have turned back after the first passengers were transferred. The storm closed the harbor entrance. That is what your report says." He stepped closer. "Then 3 months after he died, you became majority owner of the yard. Our father's shares passed according to the partnership agreement. Daniel's shares should have passed to me. You were 11. They passed into your control. To protect them. Everything you took was always for my protection. I had paid for his schools, his first apartment, graduate business training. And every failed investment he described as experience. I had placed him in finance because he wanted authority without starting on the floor. I believed providing opportunity was the same as providing love. Lucas had kept a different account. "You let the town call you a hero," he said. "You saved the Greyhaven, buried your brother, took his company, and raised his son where you could watch him. I never called myself a hero. You never corrected anyone. The memorial plaque hung between us. What are you trying to prove, Lucas? That Cole Harbor Works was never yours. And destroying it proves that. Selling it proves you cannot hold it forever." There it was, not the full confession. But the shape of it. He did not only want money. He wanted the waterfront stripped from my name. He wanted the cranes cut down, the family letters removed, and the company reduced to a transaction that ended with me powerless. You are willing to sacrifice 200 jobs for that proof. Do not pretend the workers are family. They are labor attached to an asset. That is not how your father spoke about them. His jaw tightened. You do not get to tell me who he was. I could have answered then. I could have taken him downstairs, opened Owen's ledger, and destroyed the version of Daniel he had carried since childhood. Instead, I said, "Leave the plaque until the board approves its removal." Lucas laughed once. "You still think you give orders here?" He signaled to the workers. The drill started. The first screw came free with a metallic snap. I walked away before they lowered Daniel's face from the wall. Owen and I reviewed the original records that afternoon. The black ledger's pages had absorbed dampness even inside the evidence bag. We separated them slowly beneath warm air, placing blotting paper between each sheet. At 9:58 p.m., the original night log recorded Daniel taking Rescue 2 without authorization. At 10:07, Owen had radioed him, Rescue 2, confirmed destination. Daniel answered, engine test inside the East Channel. At 10:12, harbor radar showed him outside the channel. Moving north with no running lights. At 10:19, I called from the Coast Guard station, Daniel, turn back. Weather line is crossing the lake. Static covered most of his response. The log preserved 3 words, delivery first. 10 minutes. At 10:27, another vessel challenged him over the radio after nearly colliding in the snow. At 10:34, Daniel reported steering damage. At 10:41, the Greyhaven issued its distress call. At 10:46, Daniel admitted he had struck floating debris and was losing power. At 10:49, I ordered him to deploy his anchor and wait inside the lee of the breakwater. At 10:51, he refused, cargo can't be found. The ledger contained a customs attachment that never entered the public file. Divers recovered 6 industrial drums from Rescue 2. The labels had been stripped, but testing identified concentrated chemical solvent stolen from a manufacturing site in Thunder Bay. Daniel had agreed to transport them across the lake for men who paid in cash. The weight had been loaded too far aft. One drum broke loose during the turn and damaged a steering linkage. Daniel continued toward the harbor because he feared an official rescue would expose the cargo. He entered the breakwater at the wrong angle, ignored my instruction to hold position, and struck submerged stone. The Greyhaven did not kill him. I did not abandon him. Daniel chose the cargo until the lake removed the choice. Owen played the surviving radio tape. Static filled the room. Then my younger voice emerged. Rescue 2, drop anchor now. Daniel answered through wind and engine noise. I can make the gap. You cannot see the marker. I know this harbor. Daniel, that is an order. The next sound was not an answer, it was steel tearing against rock. I stopped the tape. For years, I had remembered the sequence without needing to hear it. The timestamps lived inside me more accurately than birthdays. Owen folded his hands over the ledger. You kept the smuggling out of the report. Our father had already suffered one stroke. Daniel's widow had left years earlier. Lucas had no one. He had you. He had a father people respected. I thought taking that away would orphan him twice. So you let him believe you chose strangers over Daniel. I never knew he believed that. You never asked. The accusation settled into the room. I had watched Lucas grow suspicious of affection and hungry for status. Each time he pulled away, I offered something measurable. Tuition. A title. A house down payment. An office beside mine. He must have seen every gift as compensation from the woman who had taken his inheritance. I had protected Daniel's name and allowed Lucas's resentment to grow around the silence. Avery came after his shift. I showed him the original ledger. Customs analysis, and radio transcript. He read without speaking. When he finished, he closed the folder. If this becomes public, Daniel's widow's family gets dragged into it. Lucas's mother has nieces in town. People who had nothing to do with those drums. I know. And if it stays buried, Lucas uses your altered report against you. I know that too. Avery looked toward the harbor office ceiling. How much of one family do you plan to destroy to save this yard? Lucas is already destroying it. That wasn't my question. I had no answer that did not sound like justification. Daniel made his choice, Avery continued. You made yours afterward. Lucas made his now. Don't mix them together because it helps you sleep. I have not slept well in 27 years. Then stop pretending secrecy worked. That evening, I asked Lucas to meet me alone aboard the North Star. The ferry remained suspended in the repaired dry dock. Temporary lights cast long shadows through the empty passenger cabin. Lucas arrived carrying his phone and no coat. This better be important. It is your last private opportunity. For what? Stop the sale. Withdraw the insurance claim against Avery. Preserve every company record and admit that the maintenance documents were falsified. His expression barely changed. You have proof. I'm giving you a choice before proof makes the choice for you. You always did enjoy speaking from higher ground. I am standing on the same deck. You own the deck. For now. He looked through the dark windows toward the yard. You want me to confess so you can forgive me privately and remain in control publicly. No. I want you to prevent consequences you cannot reverse. Like you prevented them for my father. I let the silence answer. Lucas turned toward me. You know I found the report. Yes. Then say it. Tell me why the Greyhaven mattered more. I could not give him half the truth again, but I was not ready to place the whole truth in his hands while he was still building the sail. Your father's death was not the story you were told. His face hardened. Whose fault was it? Lucas, yours or his? I did not answer quickly enough. He nodded as though my hesitation confirmed everything. You paid for my education because you felt guilty. I paid because you were talented. You gave me finance because you did not trust me near operations. I gave you what you asked for. You gave me whatever kept me useful and grateful. I raised you. You funded me. The words landed harder than shouting would have. I was not good at being what you needed, I said. That does not make the care false. It makes it convenient. He walked toward the exit. Withdraw the sale, I said. Tell me the truth about the waiver and the manifold. I will tell you everything about that night. Lucas stopped with his hand on the door. No, think carefully. I have thought about this since I was old enough to read your report. He opened the door. The auction moves to next Friday. Sabrina says delay only gives you time to interfere. You are accelerating it. I am ending it. The door closed behind him. By morning, notices had gone to the lender, vendors, city officials, and prospective buyers. The waterfront auction would happen 5 days earlier than planned. Lucas had rejected the final exit I could offer without exposing Daniel. Later that afternoon, I saw him crossing the upper fitting loft with Sabrina. I followed far enough to confirm where they were going, then stopped behind a steel fire door when their voices carried through the gap. Lucas sounded furious. You promised controlling ownership after closing. I promised participation. You said the shell company was being formed for me. It was formed to acquire the property. With my family's name, my lender relationships, and my access. All useful contributions. What percentage do I own? There was a pause. Sabrina answered without warmth. You will receive a 3-year consulting agreement, performance incentives, and an option subject to board approval. That is not ownership. No, Lucas. It is employment. The silence that followed lasted several seconds, then Sabrina added, once the waterfront transfers, the buyer will not need a coal to control Coal Harbor Works. I left the loft before either of them opened the fire door. Lucas had just learned that Sabrina never intended to make him an owner. Lucas had spent too long turning resentment into a business plan. I did not know which version would walk out of that room. Nia found me 20 minutes later in the records annex with 3 bankers' boxes open around her. Sabrina ordered a title cleanup, she said. Her buyer wants every old restriction removed before the auction. Can they? Most are expired. One isn't. She handed me a copy of the waterfront deed recorded in 1968. An attachment near the back carried my grandfather's signature and the signatures of 9 shipyard workers. The covenant had been created after a strike ended with a crane collapse and 2 men dead. My grandfather kept ownership, but the settlement created an employee trust with one protection no later board had bothered to read. If a coal family owner attempted to sell the operating yard while a maritime safety investigation remained active, the employee trust received the right to match any legitimate offer. Until the matching period expired, voting authority over the transfer moved temporarily to the trust. The covenant did not give the workers the yard, it gave them a chance to buy it before the family could sell it out from under them. Is it still enforceable? I asked. The county still lists it as an exception to clean title. That was why Sabrina wanted it removed. A labor attorney and an independent title examiner spent the night checking every amendment. It follows the land, the examiner said. It was never released. The attorney warned that matching rights were not discounts. The trust would need the full winning price within 10 business days. Nia looked at me. If the employees can finance it, they can own it. By sunrise, we had the first weapon that did not depend on exposing Daniel or asking the lender to trust me. It depended on the workers trusting one another. Avery called a closed meeting in the union hall beneath old strike photographs. Nearly every department sent someone. They had heard my promises before and watched me step aside while Lucas accused Avery. I explained the covenant without dressing it up. It gives the employee trust the right to match the winning bid. It does not give us money. It does not erase the debt. It does not guarantee the North Star returns to service. A machinist asked, "How much are you asking us to risk?" "We won't know until the auction." So this is a plan without a price. It is a right without financing. A dispatcher asked whether their pensions would be seized. No. Participation is voluntary. A voice from the back said, "Easy for you to say. Your name is on the gate." Avery stepped forward. "That is the problem," he said. "Her name stays on everything while we carry the risk." The room quieted. He looked directly at me. "If workers use their savings to match the bid, what do you surrender?" "My voting control shifts under the covenant." "Temporarily." "What do you surrender after closing?" The answer had existed since Nia showed me the deed, my majority ownership. Murmurs moved through the hall. Avery did not blink. Permanent controlling ownership held by the employee trust. "Yes. And you cannot buy it back later?" "No." You step down as chair. If the trust closes the purchase, the workers elect the board. That board decides whether I have any role. For most of my life, I believed the yard survived because someone from my family remained strong enough to control it. Lucas had used that belief against me. The only way to save the legacy was to stop treating ownership as the legacy. Avery picked up the trustee badge he had left on the table days earlier. "I will bring the covenant to a vote," he said. "But your shares transfer through signed agreements at closing. No promises. You will have the documents. And my name is cleared before anyone asks me to invest $1. Gabe's report and the evidence will clear it." The vote to explore an employee bid passed, but not unanimously. Some workers believed Lucas had already won. Others refused to risk retirement savings on a yard that had nearly failed under family leadership. We formed the Coal Harbor Employee Acquisition Trust under the old covenant. Each worker received the same disclosure packet, risk statement, and access to independent financial counseling. No one was pressured to contribute. That rule cost us money and preserved the plan. The regional credit union met with us after hours. Nia presented 5 years of Ferry revenue. Gabe explained that the failure came from deliberate alteration, not neglect. Avery presented a management structure based on licensed supervisors and elected representatives. I offered my shares and a subordinated note repaid only after payroll, pensions, and senior debt. The credit union agreed to consider financing 70% of a qualified matching bid. The rest had to come from employee investment units, insurance proceeds, and my note. It was not enough, but it was credible. We needed Lucas and Sabrina to believe it was hopeless. Nia allowed an incomplete financing worksheet to remain in a conference printer Lucas's staff routinely checked. It showed a gap large enough to kill the bid. The real term sheet stayed outside the yard. The next morning, Lucas passed me near the fabrication bay. "I heard the union is discussing ownership." "They discuss many things. They cannot match the buyer." "Then you have nothing to worry about." His eyes narrowed. "You are encouraging them to gamble their pensions so you can keep fighting me." I told them exactly what they could lose. "Did you tell them you made this company dependent on one Ferry contract?" "Yes." That answer unsettled him. He had built much of his case around my refusal to admit fault. Each truth I accepted removed a place for him to hide his choices. Gabe completed his technical report that afternoon. It stated that the steering failure required deliberate physical access after installation and credentials capable of bypassing ordinary maintenance controls. It did not accuse Lucas by name, it did not need to, the false waiver, deleted footage. Contractor van, duplicate purchase, and altered valve were becoming a chain. In the plate shop, workers laid the trust documents across the unfinished hull of a new ferry. One by one, they signed beside chalk marks and weld seams. Some committed a few $100s. Others committed portions of retirement accounts built over 20 years. They understood they were buying a chance, not a victory. I carried my majority share certificate toward an open furnace where scrap brackets glowed orange. For a second, I imagined dropping it into the heat. Avery caught my wrist. "Paper doesn't surrender power," he said. "Signatures do." He handed the certificate to the attorney. I signed the conditional transfer agreement on the unfinished hull. My shares would pass to the employee trust only if it matched the winning bid and closed the purchase. Afterward, Avery stood beside me. "Do you regret it?" "I regret waiting for a betrayal before I learned how to share control." "That sounds almost honest." "It is the most honest answer I have." Sabrina discovered the title inquiry that evening. Within an hour, Lucas issued an amended auction notice moving the sale forward by 48 hours. The explanation cited creditor exposure. The real purpose was to reduce our financing window. "They know," Nia said, "they know we found something. They may not know what." Lucas began requesting copies of Sabrina's correspondence, payment approvals, and vendor instructions. He was no longer acting like her partner. He was assembling a file he could use to claim she controlled the transaction. Sabrina did the same to him. Two people who had conspired to sell the yard were now preparing to survive each other. That night, the trust remained several $1,000,000 short. The credit union had not issued final approval, the insurer had not accepted Gabe's findings, and half the workers had not decided whether to participate. The covenant gave us a door. Lucas was moving the auction faster than we could reach it. At 11:07, Nia called from the records annex. Her voice was so controlled that I knew the news was bad. "I found a systems work order Lucas approved." "What kind?" "Accounting server maintenance." "The night before the auction." I drove back to the yard and found her staring at a service schedule buried beneath routine software updates. The vendor description read data hygiene and legacy storage optimization. Nia opened the technical attachment. It overwrites deleted sectors, purges transaction histories, and destroys the recovery indexes. Every invoice, altered approval, vendor trail, and internal payment record we had not already copied could disappear. The work order authorized the cleanup to begin at midnight. Lucas was not waiting to see whether the sale succeeded, he was preparing to erase how he created it. At 11:13, Lucas disabled my company credentials. Nia's screen went black first. Avery's access failed seconds later. By the time we reached accounting, 2 contract guards were waiting outside the glass doors. "Mr. Cole has suspended all non-executive access pending the auction. I own the majority of this company. Not operational control." The cleanup vendor was already inside the server room. Lucas had locked the employee trustees out of the records we needed to challenge him. Avery looked at me. "What's the order?" This time, I stepped back. "You coordinate the floor. Tell me where I'm useful." He made sure I meant it, then turned to the night shift supervisors. "No forced doors. No borrowed passwords. Preserve only records stored on equipment you're authorized to operate." One illegal shortcut could let Lucas call us saboteurs. The yard's accounting ran through modern servers, but its plasma cutters, welding controllers, hydraulic benches, and diagnostic stands kept local audit files so a lost network connection could not ruin a job. They did not store bank statements, they stored every executive credential used to approve maintenance overrides and equipment calibrations. Old terminals woke beneath flickering work lights. Carla Voss, a licensed machinist, opened the hydraulic test archive under her normal account. The legitimate North Star installation appeared first. 9 days later, a second service session appeared. Executive credential, Locol 04, pressure cycle exemption, external service tablet, 27 minutes. Another terminal showed the same credential opening the drydock gate after hours. A paint controller recorded the exact white sealant used to cover the fresh tool marks. The fabrication printer retained a spool copy of the false waiver. Lucas had wiped the central history. The machines had remembered him. Nia ordered read-only exports while each operator recorded the screen and the steps taken. New drives were labeled, witnessed, and verified remotely by the credit union's technology consultant. Security sealed the records annex before we could remove one box of paper invoices. A floor drain connected that office to an inspection channel near the plate shop. Leon Mercer, the night janitor, was authorized to maintain it. He used the existing cleaning line to pull waterproof sleeves through the channel. An accounting clerk inside the annex sent only documents she was authorized to handle. Security controlled the doors. The workers passed the records underneath them. At 12:02, directories began disappearing from the central server. Purchase histories. Vendor messages. Approval archives. Lucas was erasing the official record while the night shift copied the industrial record he did not know existed. He arrived with Sabrina 17 minutes later. Shut this down. Avery met him at the edge of the floor. These machines are being accessed by licensed operators. We are preserving local logs required by the safety investigation. I suspended trustee access. You did not suspend the investigation. Lucas looked past him at me. This is your operation. No, I said. It's Avery's. For the first time, the answer was not strategy. It was trust. Sabrina whispered to Lucas, then left carrying a leather document case she had not brought in. An hour later, her attorney called Nia. Sabrina had checked out of her hotel and planned to drive to Minneapolis. Her attorney claimed she was preserving client files. Nia sent him the duplicate manifold invoice linked to Sabrina's office. The shell company formation page bearing her signature, and Lucas's request for copies of her communications. Then she wrote, "Lucas is preparing to make your client the architect of everything." The attorney called back in 7 minutes. He requested a formal proffer with the county prosecutor and maritime regulator. No immunity was promised. Sabrina would provide the original shell company agreements, payment instructions, and encrypted messages in exchange for consideration of her early cooperation. She wants a guarantee, Nia said. She won't get one. Then she may leave. Her choice. Sabrina agreed because self-preservation mattered more to her than loyalty. One message showed Lucas asking whether the steering failure could occur during an unmanned test. Sabrina replied that the altered valve would lock below the emergency relief threshold. Lucas answered, "Good. No injuries. We need regulatory suspension, not a funeral." In another exchange, he selected Avery's gate code and inspection stamp because everyone trusted him, making the negligence story believable. He understood the sabotage and chose the man who would carry the blame. At 2:40, my phone rang. Lucas stood outside by the repaired drydock gate. Through the plate shop windows, I watched workers replace the steel his plan had bent. "Sabrina lied to me," he said. "I know. She intended to strip the yard and leave me with a consulting contract. You helped her reach the gate. I can still stop her. I challenge the shell company and negotiate directly with the lender." "In exchange for what?" "You dissolve the employee bid." Even after learning Sabrina had used him, Lucas still wanted the workers removed from the future. "You can remain founder emeritus," he continued. "Keep your office. Attend launches. Your name stays on the gate." He was offering me a ceremonial chair inside the company he had nearly destroyed. "You want me beside you saying you were right." "Silence. I will say publicly that I failed you," I told him. I hid the truth about Daniel, mistook financial support for closeness, and kept control when I should have shared it. His breathing changed. "Then withdraw the evidence." "No, you admit you caused this." "I admit my choices helped shape your anger. They did not forge my signature, alter a valve, frame Avery, or divert company money. You protected my father." "Yes. But not me. I protected you badly. That does not mean I never loved you." "Prove it." "I will not prove love by erasing your choices." Behind him, a worker struck the repaired gate bracket with a hammer. Lucas looked toward the crew fixing the damage he had ordered. then he ended the call. By 4, we had enough preserved material to make suppression difficult, but not enough time to trust one institution. Nia prepared 4 identical evidence packages. The insurer received Gabe's report, the machine logs, and the false claim. The maritime regulator received the altered valve analysis, credential records, and chain of custody statements. The lender received the duplicate purchases, diverted funds, and evidence connecting Sabrina to the buyer. The auction trustee received the employee covenant, shell company documents, and noticed that some purchase financing might consist of money taken from Coal Harbor Works. Each package was delivered through counsel at the same minute. If one recipient buried it, the other 3 would know. Lucas responded before sunrise. He claimed I had coordinated disgruntled workers to manufacture electronic evidence after losing control. He accused Avery of manipulating terminals, Nia of stealing documents, and Gabe of falsifying his report. The lender accepted neither story. It froze the restructuring committee's authority and demanded independent verification before recognizing the employee bid. Then the credit union called, without written assurance that the lender would honor the covenant and release its lien at closing. Final financing could not be approved. The deadline was noon. At 9, the insurer acknowledged evidence of intentional damage but withheld payment pending fraud review. At 10, Sabrina's cooperation nearly collapsed when the prosecutor refused to promise she would avoid charges. At 11, the auction trustee confirmed the employee trust could enter, but only with committed funds covering the full matching requirement. We were still $680,000 short. The number sat on the union hall screen beneath old strike photographs. The workers had contributed what they could. Asking for more would turn solidarity into pressure. Avery closed the laptop. We submit what we have and challenge the rejection later. Later won't stop the buyer from dismantling the yard, Nia said. I could cover only part of the gap. The credit union had limited my contribution so the employee trust would not remain dependent on my control. At 11:34, snow began filling the tire tracks outside. Then headlights appeared beyond the fence. An old pickup entered first. Retired pipefitter Wallace Dean climbed out carrying a folder beneath his coat. Behind him came another truck, then a sedan, then a church van. Retired welders, dispatchers, machinists, and widows crossed the lot through the snow. Owen Pike came in last. Wallace placed a certified check and signed subscription agreement on the table. We heard the night shift was buying the yard. You understand the risk? Avery asked. I worked here 33 years. I understand it better than the buyer. The others formed a line. No contribution was large. 5,000. 12,000. 2,500. Some used approved self-directed retirement funds after speaking with the trust's independent advisor. Others brought savings checks. One widow invested the final profit-sharing distribution her husband had received before he died. Every agreement was reviewed. No one was rushed. No one was promised safety. At 11:56, Nia entered the final amount. Committed funds exceeded the requirement by $14,000. The room fell silent. Avery looked at the active workers, then at the retirees holding snow-covered hats in their hands. He pressed the submission key. At 11:58, the Coal Harbor Employee Acquisition Trust became a qualified bidder. At 11:58, the Employee Trust became a qualified bidder. At noon, the auctioneer opened the sale beneath the North Stars. Restored hull. The drydock gate had been repaired, but the concrete still carried scars from the impact. Folding chairs filled the work floor. Workers sat beside lenders, regulators, reporters, city officials, and attorneys who had never entered the yard before it became valuable enough to fight over. A temporary stage stood where the crushed maintenance platform had been. The maritime safety hearing came first. Gabe placed the recovered steering manifold beneath a camera connected to Lucas's presentation screen. He showed the original factory channel, then the section someone had ground thin and concealed beneath matching sealant. This alteration trapped hydraulic pressure during the high-load dock test. He said. It was designed to create a steering lock without rupturing the main system. Lucas's attorney rose. Can you identify who altered it? No, then you cannot testify that Mr. Cole touched this component. I did not say he did. Gabe displayed the machine logs. I can testify that his executive credential authorized the pressure exemption, entered the diagnostic system after installation, and opened the dry dock controls during the unrecorded service period. Lucas remained still, then Sabrina's signed communications appeared. She had written that the altered valve would cause regulatory suspension without placing passengers at ordinary operating risk. Lucas had replied that he wanted a shutdown. Not casualties. The rune changed when those words appeared. Until then, some people could still pretend the accident had grown out of desperation and bad judgment. The messages showed design. Nia testified next. She walked through the duplicate manifold invoice, the false vendor tied to Sabrina's office, the diverted maintenance payments, and the accounting server cleanup Lucas had authorized before the auction. Then she showed the financing package submitted by the shell company. $2,100,000 of its purchase deposit came from a short-term loan Lucas had issued to a contractor using Coal Harbor Works funds. He had used the company's money to help buy the company. The lender's attorney requested an immediate recess. Lucas stood. That transfer was an authorized bridge facility. You approved both sides, Nia said. The contractor received the funds, returned them to the shell buyer, and never performed the work listed on the loan file. That is an interpretation. No. That is the bank path. The auction trustee left the stage with the lender, city attorney, and maritime regulator. While they reviewed the records, Lucas walked toward me. You think this makes you clean? No, he held up a yellowed copy of the rescue report. Then let's make sure they know that. He stepped to the public microphone before his attorney could stop him. My aunt altered an official maritime report after my father died. The room went quiet. Lucas displayed the amended rescue timeline. He pointed to the missing references, changed language, and my signature. She concealed evidence for 27 years. She allowed this town to believe she saved 14 strangers while my father died because she refused to return for him. Workers turned toward me. A city official whispered to the regulator. The trust attorney closed her folder and waited. Lucas looked directly at Avery. You are asking workers to purchase a company from someone who falsified a safety record. I stood and walked to the microphone. Yes, I said. I altered the public account. The reaction moved through the dry dock like wind crossing sheet metal. I explained Daniel's unauthorized departure, the stolen chemical drums, the damaged steering linkage, and his refusal to hold position after I ordered him to drop anchor. I did not describe him as a criminal first. I described him as my younger brother, a man who loved his son, made a desperate choice, and kept making it after the danger became clear. I removed the smuggling evidence from the public report, I said. I believed preserving Daniel's name would protect Lucas. It did not. My silence allowed him to believe I abandoned his father and took what belonged to him. Lucas's face tightened. I raised him with tuition payments. Houses, promotions, and explanations delivered too late. I treated provision like affection and control like protection. That failure belongs to me. His attorney pulled at his sleeve. Lucas ignored him. Then withdraw the evidence, he said. No, if you loved me, you would not destroy my life in this room. I did love you. The words were harder to say publicly than the confession. I loved you badly. I failed to trust you with painful truth. I helped create the distance between us. I looked toward the damaged manifold, but I did not make you sabotage the North Star. I did not make you frame Avery, forge my approval, divert company money, or erase the records. Lucas's voice broke. You protected him. Yes. And you won't protect me. Not from what you chose to do. For a second, I saw the boy I had raised standing inside the man who had tried to sell the yard. Then he stepped away. The auction trustee returned. The shell bidder's qualification is suspended, she announced. Its deposit contains funds subject to a disputed insider transaction. The bid cannot be accepted without clean replacement financing, which has not been provided. Lucas's presentation screen went dark. The next highest valid offer came from a waterfront redevelopment group. Their plan replaced the fabrication bays with warehouses and private docking facilities. The trustee announced the price. $12,400,000. Then she recognized the recorded employee covenant. the Coal Harbor Employee Acquisition Trust may exercise its matching right at the valid purchase price. Avery stood among the workers. The trust attorney read the final terms. Debt, insurance uncertainty, repair obligations, and the risk of losing every invested dollar. No one was allowed to vote without hearing the danger. Then Avery asked those approving the match to raise their hands. One hand rose in the front row, then another: machinists, welders, dispatchers, electricians, retirees, widows. Hands continued rising until the dry dock looked less like an auction and more like a shift waiting for its assignment. Avery counted twice. The trustees authorized the match. The credit union delivered its commitment. The employee funds, retired worker investments, insurance reserve, and my subordinated note completed the package. The trustee struck the podium. The matching right is accepted. No one cheered immediately. They understood that ownership began with debt, repairs, and work. Then the shipyard siren sounded, not the emergency alarm, the old shift siren. Avery had ordered one blast for the first worker-owned shift. The sound rolled across the harbor and came back from the frozen lake. Lucas stood alone beside the dead presentation screen. The lender removed him from executive authority that afternoon. The board suspended his shares under the fraud and conflict provisions until the civil claims could be resolved. The employee trust's closing documents permanently transferred my controlling shares. The yard filed claims to recover the diverted money and losses caused by the sabotage. The regulator referred the evidence to state and federal prosecutors. No one declared Lucas guilty in the dry dock. That decision belonged somewhere else, under rules neither he nor I controlled. 6 months later, the North Star returned to the water. I attended the launch from the guest section. The new board included Avery, Nia, 2 department representatives, a credit union director, and an independent maritime engineer. My name no longer appeared above the main office. The workers had renamed the company Harbor North Cooperative. They preserved the old Coal Harbor Works sign inside the employee archive, beside photographs of strikes, rescues, failures, and launches. Nothing was erased. That morning, a letter arrived from Lucas through his attorney. He was awaiting trial and living under court restrictions. The letter contained no apology, only one question: did you ever love me, or was I another responsibility you managed? I answered on a single page: I loved you, I failed you, both are true, neither truth removes responsibility for what you chose. I sealed the reply and walked to the employee archive. Daniel's memorial plaque rested on a shelf beside the original harbor log and my corrected public statement. The full record was available to the family, workers, and investigators, with the innocent names protected where the law allowed. I removed the brass rescue whistle from beneath my coat. I had carried it through storms, funerals, board meetings, and every day of the fight for the yard. I placed it inside the archive case. Avery noticed. You sure? It belongs to whoever answers next. Outside, the North Star's horn sounded. Her engines moved her away from the dock. Workers lined the rail while families watched from the pier. The repaired steering held steady as the ferry turned toward open water. For the first time in my adult life, the shipyard continued without waiting for my permission. I walked down the pier as the worker-owned North Star entered Lake Superior.